Parent-Teacher Conference Day by Chris Baker Dersch. My son doesn't read. He knows his letters and the sounds they make. He has some sight words, but he can't sit down with a book, even a very easy book, and decode and understand it. There are a lot of tragedies that can befall your child. They could get cancer, the car they are riding in could be hit by a drunk driver, someone could decide to break into their school or hijack their school bus. These are things moms think about in their worst moments. My 7-year-old not yet being able to read is not a worst moment. It just feels like it, right now, at this parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Healy is incredibly nice. Carter isn't the first non-reading second grader she's ever come across, I am sure. He's just the first one that I know. She calmly explains what she is helping him work on in class and how the reading specialist will work on similar things with him one-on-one in a different way. I interrupt her. I don't mean to. She doesn't know I'm missing a meeting for this. She doesn't deserve my impatience, and it isn't like I don't want to be here. But I want to solve this problem. I don't want to sit here and talk about it. So I ask bluntly, what can we do at home? What is our job? Keep doing what you're doing, she says. Read books together, do the homework assignments, practice the sight words. Carter's a smart kid. It'll come. Smart kid. I know he's a smart kid. What Carter doesn't know about hermit crabs isn't worth knowing. How he remembers it all, how he learned it, I will never know. Did I mention the kid can't read? But when other parents talk about their smart kids, it's all about how they read at age 4. It is never about hermit crabs. When my oldest was little, I joined a baby group. I was a first-time mom, it was free, and it seemed like a good idea to talk to other moms about what was happening at our house. And it wasn't bad. I stayed with it for 3 months, from the time she was 1 month old until my maternity leave ended. Occasionally we would get together for a play date after that, but everybody's work schedule got busy and all the kids headed off for different daycares, and eventually the kids made friends in their own social circles, and what moms got along didn't really matter so much anymore. I miss those moms. The really crummy thing about your kids making their own friends is you have to get along, or at least pretend to get along, with those friends' parents. My kids have great friends. But inevitably, their friends have the sort of parents who love to talk about how their kids read at age 4 and are now reading at a 7th grade level at age 6. I want to ask them who cares. What 6-year-old wants to read a book aimed at 7th graders anyway? But that's not how it works in momland. So I bite my lip and say nothing. It isn't so bad. I only have to see them until the birthday cake gets cut and then I'm out of there. But I do miss getting to choose my own friends. With Carter, I went back to work after 12 weeks rather than 4 months. Money was tight, and we had to pay for daycare for Ella while I was home, otherwise she would lose her spot. And then there was this big project at work, and it only made sense. And now he's the one that doesn't read. Of course. He's the one who didn't go to baby group or story time. He's the one who doesn't read. As usual, it feels like my fault. Never mind the daycare that I paid a fortune for, and that I'm sure was excellent at preparing him for school. If something is missing, it will come down to I was not there for him in those formative years. Every working mom feels this way. And the lovely Mrs. Healy keeps insisting that there's nothing I can do to fix it. Just keep working at it. I know she's right, but honestly, if I gave an answer like that at my job, they would demand more. Not that I would know more. And I'm sure Mrs. Healy doesn't have magic answers either, but that doesn't mean much, in her job or mine. The conference ends on that note. We will get together again in 3 months to discuss this further. Unless Mrs. Healy notices something very out of the ordinary in the meantime, we will continue doing what we're doing for 3 months. I remember to say goodbye to my husband, sometimes I forget, and head back to my office where I have not only missed the meeting, but also a one-on-one with the VP of Marketing on the new project. It's going to be a long day for me. I text my husband to let him know I'll be late. When I get home, dinner is waiting for me on the stove. Grilled cheese, Jay's specialty. Not very good served cold. He picked the kids up from school, which means he will need to remember to get the booster seats out of his car before he leaves in the morning. I want to go tell him that now, before I forget, but I'm too tired. I chew on my gelatinous sandwich and go in search of my kids. Ella is curled up with a book, homework done. My children the opposites. I kiss her on the head, and she barely looks up, like her father with football. I can hear the theme song to SportsCenter through the door to the den. I'm too tired to be irritated with him for not coming out to say hello. After all, he did have the kids all afternoon and cook dinner. Such as it is. Carter is lying on the bench by the breakfast nook, using one cat as a pillow and petting the other. It's his favorite hiding place. He goes there when he feels vulnerable. He says he likes to think there. I knock on the table, and he carefully pokes his head up, not wanting to disturb either cat. "How was your day?" I ask him. He regards me for a moment, considering. Never has there been a more serious 7-year-old than my son. "I don't know what happens to Toby Anderson," he finally says. This is a name I've not heard before. I try very hard to keep tabs on who my kids' friends are. I remind myself of this as more guilt starts to rise up. "Who's Toby Anderson?" I ask. He pulls a book out that he's been sitting on, a beat-up paperback with a picture of a kid reading what looks like a treasure map. The title says, "The Many Adventures of Toby Anderson." Everybody's read it. I wish I knew what happens. He looks a little blue. Not crying sad, just wistful. I can understand that. I know I'm supposed to make him do his homework and then read a book at his reading level or slightly below, but at the moment I don't particularly care. Nor do I particularly want to tackle the sink full of dishes, the briefcase full of work, or even the tube of eye makeup remover in my bathroom. At the moment, all I want to do is find out what happens to Toby Anderson. "Want to read it together?" I ask him. He nods and scoots over, allowing me to sit next to him in the nook, in his special hiding place. Together in that space, we open the book, and right now, at this moment, we do what we can do. Hello, and welcome to No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction Podcast. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I am producer and editor. Today's episode, Dyslexic Thinking, means a great deal to me personally. I spent 4 years working at a school for dyslexic kids and really learned so much about the skills and talents those kids have, how differently their brains work, and also how hard they work to overcome life dealing them kind of a rough hand at times. Parent-Teacher Conference Day, which you just heard, is sort of a longer piece. It's not really flash fiction. It's more of a short story, but as I've said before, occasionally we are going to feature some of those slightly longer, under 2,000 word pieces, and that one seemed like a great one to share in combination with That Old Family Problem, which is coming up. That Old Family Problem is more traditional flash fiction. It's less than 700 words. And it's a pretty powerful little story. So I'm going to try not to talk too much and just get you straight to that. So I'm going to very quickly update you on how things are going with the podcast. We are available now on iTunes and Stitcher. That's new since I last talked to you. It's been about a week and a half since I last put up an episode. I've been out of town and I am still working on that release schedule for the podcast. I did some math, and I realized if we stick with every week, you're looking at 104 pieces of flash fiction by me per year, which is more than I think any person alive wants to hear. So I'm thinking of taking this down to every other week release, which means we're looking at episode 4 coming out about June 26th. I've said before, and I do mean, I would love to feature pieces by someone who's not me, and we are starting to see a little bit of a pickup in the submissions. All the information about how to submit is available on our website, noextrawords.wordpress.com, and there's also lots of information there about the podcast, all our show notes, all that kind of stuff. So if you are thinking about submitting, and if we do see a pickup in submissions, we may well go back to every week, but for right now, every other week. I would love to hear from you, what you like, what you don't like, how bad my sound quality is, how terrible my stories are, whatever is on your mind. I think my fragile ego can take it, and there's all kinds of ways to get in touch with me, and they are all listed there right on that WordPress site, noextrawords@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page, there's a Twitter handle, all that stuff. So if you have questions about flash fiction, about what in the world we're doing here, maybe we could even take some of those questions on the air. In the meantime, I'm going to get out of your way, and I'm going to put up That Old Family Problem, and we're going to look for you guys around June 26th with episode 4, and I hope you're enjoying No Extra Words. The Old Family Problem by Chris Baker-Dersch. The son understands now that his father couldn't read. It was spectacularly amazing, though, how good he was at never letting on. His cover was carefully constructed. He was a smart man. You have to be smart to create that kind of illusion. In his shop, he would slide the order slip across the counter and have the customer complete it, "to make sure I get your address and name spelling correct." He had hymns and Bible verses memorized. His memory was faultless. He told his children that education was so important that they would have report cards read out loud around the family dinner table by their mother so the whole family could know what was going on in school. That was the worst part. The son's report cards were always terrible and never lived up to the high standards his parents had for him. 2 older sisters always had raving reports of high-quality work and excellent behavior. He never did. His father's eyes were sorrowful when those reports were read and shared with the family. Of course, his father had the excuse of being an immigrant and not having much access to education, but he was probably disappointed in himself for not learning to read, probably never understood why it didn't come easy to him. The father was gone before the son started his own business. His father's, sadly, couldn't last. The farm community that had kept the machine shop going gave way to a suburb that couldn't sustain it. But entrepreneurship ran in the family, and at the age of 22 he started his own business. He kept his own books. He was very proud of that. No CPA for him. He understood business accounting and numbers and navigated them like a pro. But his fiancée, who later became his wife, managed company reports, customer correspondence, and billing. He couldn't write the letters, couldn't read the replies, couldn't form the words. Computers helped his atrocious spelling, but written language just never made sense to him. His son, the grandson his father will never meet, is now 8 years old. When the boy started school, the father had high hopes that everything would be different. After all, the kid had had alphabet blocks and books in his crib from the beginning. Everything they told you to do to raise smart kids, they had done. And yet, right from his first day of kindergarten, the old family problem reared its head. The kid had every species of bug that lived in their yard memorized, and yet it took him a year to learn to spell his name. What was wrong with their family, anyway? He shouldn't have waited this long to agree to testing, but it is hard to admit when your child is struggling. Now, sitting in the educational psychologist's office, he feels like the chairs are too small. His knees bang the table. Dyslexia is the first thing that comes out of her mouth. He's heard of that. Something about reversing letters. So the kid is stupid. The test says so. No, the ed psych says, but of course she has to say that. And then she starts to talk about dyslexia. It's more than messed up letters. It's a different way of thinking. A different way of looking at things. And it's genetic. Tears prick his eyes, and he has to look away from her. After all these years, after all this time, he's not stupid? He never thought there would be an explanation, an easy solution. The way the ed psych talks about dyslexia, it's like a gift. Some of the greatest inventors, artists, and scientists the world has known might well have been dyslexic. There's some good evidence of this. And there are interventions that can help. His son can learn to read. He might not be lightning fast at it, but he can learn. Could... His voice stammers, low. Could you teach me? It's what his father would have wanted. He is sure of it.